Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm, we're now live.
Okay, thank you. Good morning and welcome to the Primary Care Commissioning Committee meeting, which will be the last meeting in public. I'm Margaret Keary, lay member, and will be chairing today. We are meeting virtually in response to the limitations placed on governance by the COVID-19 pandemic. Members of the public have been invited to view this meeting via a link available from the NHS Portsmouth Clinical Commissioning Group website, and papers for the meeting are also available on this website. Today's meeting is being recorded so that in the event of a failure of technology, it can continue and will then be uploaded onto the NHS Portsmouth Clinical Commissioning Group website as soon as possible. Committee members and attendees are asked to keep their microphones on mute and to only turn these on when they are called to speak. Please only use a raised hand to indicate that you wish to speak. Agenda items that required a decision will be confirmed by a raised hand by committee members only. Prior to presenting their agenda, attendees should state their name and job title, and where possible, turn on their camera. I will now ask each committee member and attendee to turn on their microphones when their name is called and confirm their name and title. If I can find them. So, sorry, slight delay. Sorry, Lisa, can you possibly go through the names for me?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Margaret. Dr. Linda Colley.
Hi, I'm Dr. Linda Colley, one of the GPs and Clinical Director for Health and Care Portsmouth.
Mark Compton has given his apologies. Simon Cooper.
Simon Cooper, Director of Primary Care and Medicines Optimisation in Portsmouth CCG.
Jason Eastman is not present. Jackie Powell.
Hello, Jackie Powell, lay member for Portsmouth CCG.
Andy Sylvester.
Good afternoon, Andy Sylvester, lay member for Portsmouth CCG.
Michelle Spanley.
Hi, I'm Michelle Spanley. I'm the Chief Finance Officer for Portsmouth CCG.
Thank you. And in attendance today we have Roger Batterbury.
Hello, I'm Roger Batterbury, Chairperson at Healthwatch Portsmouth. Thanks, Lisa.
Okay, Nicola Burnett.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm Nicola Burnett, Deputy Chief Finance Officer for Portsmouth CCG.
Justina Jeffs.
Good afternoon, I'm Justina Jeffs, Head of Governance for the CCG.
Lisa Harding.
Hello, I'm Lisa Harding, Director of Primary Care for Wessex Local Medical Committees.
Mandy Sandbrook.
Hi, I'm Mandy Sandbrook, Acting Director of Transformation for Portsmouth CCG.
Sylvia Macy.
Apologies for the delay. Sylvia Macy, Acting Deputy Director for Primary Care.
Stephen McGuinness.
Hello, Stephen McGuinness, Acting Deputy Director of Primary Care for the CCG.
Stephen Obrio. I don't know whether he's actually attending. I can't see him on screen. And myself, Elisa Stray, Business Services, 4 minutes. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Lisa. Sorry about that. I have got several ways of getting into my agenda today, which is causing a problem. Can I just go through the minutes of the Register of Interest first? Are there any extra interests to be added first? I'll take silence as no.
Oh, Dr. Colley's got a hand up. Thank you, Margaret.
Sorry, yeah, there's no more to be added. It's more for the agenda today.
Okay.
So I have to declare for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10, I believe.
And are they direct conflicts of interest, or
direct would probably be the number 10, the Primary Care Local Incentive Scheme, because that will be directly impacting my practice. And I'm not sure number 9 potentially, because the teams will directly benefit my practice, so they're probably more direct than the others.
Okay. When we come to those, perhaps we can repeat the conflict, please.
Thank you.
Okay. Can we then move to the minutes of the previous meeting? and we've got page, can you look for accuracy? Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, and page 6. Okay, page 7 and page 8. Are there any comments? No. Can we then approve those minutes? Thank you. Take silence as approval. Matters arising, the actions. The risk register amendments have been completed, I think. Steve, and they're on the agenda today.
That's correct, Margaret.
Flu and COVID vaccination update. Sylvia, has that been? This was the 5th vaccination for immunosuppressed patients.
That should have been circulated as a footnote to the minutes, but if not, I can recirculate anyway.
Okay. And the Primary Care Commissioning Committee scheme of delegation, that's completed, isn't it, Steve?
Well, yeah, I'm working with colleagues across Hampshire and Isle of Wight on that. So we're coming up with a revised scheme delegation that we can use in conjunction with our future primary care operating groups.
Okay, and the specialist clinical pharmacist team is on the agenda today, isn't it?
I'm present to pick that one up, Margaret, rather than Joe, who's on leave.
Okay, thank you. Can we then move to the primary care risk register and Steve?
Yeah, so we did make those updates as you said, Margaret. So I think it's just a question of seeing if there are any further questions or queries on the register today.
Are there any questions or queries? Jackie.
Hello, thank you for the update. I don't know if it's directly related to the risk register, but I was curious about how extended access was going and whether it was delivering what we would hope it to deliver. I don't hear much about it. Did you hear that, Steve?
Yes, we do have extended access on the agenda. I don't know if it's this meeting or the part 2, but we do have that on the agenda later on.
Okay, so I haven't seen the part 2 bits. Could you give us just a lightly recap then, if that's possible?
What specifically is your question, Jackie? Sorry.
Just how successful, how is it going? Is it delivering in the way that we want it to? Is it well
in terms of the existing arrangements?
Yes, if that's the relevant ones.
Yeah, I mean, all PCNs are currently delivering their extended access requirements in line with the DES requirements. I think take up in some cases has been patchy. They don't always fill slots, but overall fairly good utilisation of those appointments. They're broadly in line with patient requirements, what they've asked for when they've done surveys in the past. So yeah, overall, I think it's providing a good level of provision outside of the core hours.
So from what you're saying, is there still some scope for further development, and that's what we'll be discussing in part 2?
That's right. New requirements come into force from October, which completely different. Yeah.
Oh, completely different. Okay.
Well, I say completely different. It's just really bringing in line 2 different requirements together, combined into one new arrangement from October, which PCNs are required to deliver. But we've got plans in place on that.
I guess that's something that will be available to the public, which is the most important bit. How are we going to promote that?
Yeah, there'll be a big patient consultation exercise that needs to be undertaken by all the PCNs to make sure their plans do fit in with patient preferences. And then, yes, certainly we'll be working with PCNs and practices to make sure it's all publicised as well.
Thank you ever so much, Steve. Thank you.
Simon?
Just an observation regarding risk registers in their entirety, it's not per se this one. I do struggle sometimes to get into the detail and understand some of the implications, because they can be quite big documents on a spreadsheet. And I wonder if there's a chance to review how they're actually presented. I was given a different presenter in a recent meeting which showed direction of travel of each of the risks in terms of moving in and out of a centre highest risk. So it's effectively a target. And it was really helpful for me to understand which of the risks I wanted to understand and which ones I could see were going in the right direction. So I just wonder if there is a chance in the future just to review how some of these are presented. And I appreciate we're going to a PCOG move, but just sometimes they leave me a little bit cold as a big presentation on a spreadsheet. And sometimes having a better visualization allows me to narrow in on the ones that I actually really want to talk about.
Yeah. And we were having a conversation prior to the meeting about one of these in particular, Simon, which is access to urgent care, and Steve. And I think the way that the risk is, your revised revision might deal with this, Simon, if that happens in PCOG. But the way in which this particular risk is described, it's a risk for secondary care, not a risk for primary care. In the sense that, yes, there will be risks for primary care when urgent care demand rises above capacity, but that's not the risk described here.
Yeah, yeah. So it's what, if I understand the point. So we've got the discussion there around the potential failure for the UTC, and the risk mentions the impact on secondary care. Yeah. When we know there will also be a risk on primary care. I suspect that risk will go in both directions, and depending on the current state of secondary care, although I believe it's probably in the best place it's been for some time, that actually it would come back to primary care as well. And primary care is sort of difficult to say, sorry, we're full, we can't take any more people. It's the sort of the end of the stop. It's where people will end up presenting. So yeah, I think we need to reconsider how that's worded and where it sits. But there is also some work going on that will relate to the risk registers to a degree in terms of capturing the data across practices, in terms of so we can better understand when primary care is sort of inverted commas full and can't do any more. So we can actually have that open and mature conversation with other providers in terms of primary care isn't a bottomless bucket, where if everybody else says we're full, they'll have to go to primary care. Primary care can actually share some insightful data that says this is our situation. So you please don't automatically think we can accept these patients at very short notice. So hopefully we'll have something to influence those discussions going on further, but slightly off topic.
So there's a recommendation that we look again at the wording on this, but there's also a recommendation from Simon that we ask PCOG to consider revising this risk register in line with the direction of travel work that's been going on. Jackie, did you want to ask another question?
I did, but I saw Justina's hand was up before mine, so I don't know if she wanted to add anything there.
It was just to, sorry, Chair, thank you. It was just to let Simon know that we are looking at the formats of risk registers, and they have already changed for the governing board. And I think they found that quite useful. So we'll share that more broadly.
Excellent. Thank you, Justine.
Sorry, Justina. Jackie.
We might be along the same lines of looking again at some of these risks. We've had one for PCSC for a long time with the same wording about the concerns for primary care and the delivery of the service that we get from them. But I don't know if that's changed, actually gotten better. Does it still need to be on here? So that's risk. Sorry, I'm in microphone here. About halfway down, the delivery of PSC primary care service from NHS England. We've had that risk a long, long time with the same words.
Yes, on that one, Jackie. Yeah. On that one, Jackie, I think we're probably due to go out to the practice to get their views on that, because we rely on them telling us their experiences of how they're working with PCSE and what service they're getting. So it's probably a good time to renew that survey with practice to find out how the service is going at the moment.
I think that'd be really helpful, and then we can properly update what we've got as content. Thank you.
Yeah, we kind of periodically do that, but we haven't done one for a little while now.
Okay. Simon, have you said
no, that is just to quickly come back on PCSE. I think it's probably fair to say, Steve, that practices aren't jumping up and down and coming to us to say it's solved. So it's not that it's necessarily been neglected per se. I think Steve's right. We need to just review that to make sure, but it hasn't been highlighted to us from practices where we've had that input that it's improved massively. But I think we'd have been a bit more proactive and just to actually check rather than assume.
Okay. Lisa?
Thanks. Just to say, we're getting still getting a steady stream of queries from practices around particularly pension queries at the moment for PCSE. We are piloting an escalation process with PCSE, details on our website, which really sort of takes on the process that was actually adopted by the BMA, but they're sort of looking to pass that down to LMC. So from our perspective, it's still quite a hot topic.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on the risk register? Can we then just agree it in its present form with the recommendations that we've agreed? Okay. Can we then move to the finance report? Is that Michelle?
Probably hoping that Nikki's still on. Just give an update.
Yep, I'm here. I can update you. Wait, trying to turn my camera back on. This what you've got presented here is the interim month 12 position. We're just going through the final audit, which we expect to be concluded in the next week or so. So where we start is walking you through the overall CCG financial position on closing, and you will see that we broke even, give or take a rounding, as expected. In terms of delving deeper into primary care, as we knew, we did have a contingency budget through primary care that didn't have plans to be utilised in full. That was utilised by the CCG to support the system and primary care more widely through supporting some of our surge plans through the winter. So what you see in the specific primary care report is what looks like an unspent position. However, that was then reinvested into services to support the city. Other things just worth noting that we've pulled out in here for you is just in respect of the R's roles. As we went through the financial year, we saw the uptake and recruitment across those R's roles increase. So whilst we didn't utilise all of those allocations in full throughout that financial year, we are starting this financial year in a better place where we've got more of those roles identified, providing resilience across the city as the policy anticipates. I think that's your highlights. We are still going through the planning process for 22-23, so we're not able to present to you those opening budgets as of yet. We're due to resubmit the CCG plans on the 20th of June, subject to national approval. So as soon as those have been approved, they'll come back through PFOG as it is now, and the ICB PCCC in the future. So I'll pause there and see if there's any questions.
Thank you, Andrea. Any questions? Comments? No. Oh, Jackie.
Sorry, I was just slow to get my hand up. I've got Diddy screen. About the R's roles, and I think I asked this at our general board, so do we know how many are generated that have been generated across primary care? Do we have a sense of that?
I don't have the answer on my fingertips, Jackie, but as we're talking, I can have a look into it and get back to you.
Oh, thank you. And there's some of those roles can be taken up with the specialist pharmacy roles as well for the future, are we thinking?
Are you talking about the investment paper later on in the agenda? So there's complementary to the R's roles as opposed to part of that scheme.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you, Lisa. Sorry.
Any other questions? That's fine. Thank you. Thank you very much. We can move to the next item on the agenda. COVID vaccination programs. Simon.
Probably reassuringly less to update. So we are getting to a, if I could dare say, towards a business as usual type approach. And in fact, we are being asked to potentially pause some of our sites through the summer to give some of those sites a well-earned rest in terms of that. They are, all of the PCNs are still running ad hoc clinics, and now having spoken to some of the PCNs, they are happy to take patients to attend directly if they're not putting on the regular clinics. So we are still seeing a trickle of patients still attending. We still have the community pharmacies providing, and we still have Solent doing some outreach work in terms of pop-up clinics around the city. And we are still seeing a degree of first vaccinations coming in, which I'm not entirely sure whether I'm pleased about or disappointed. I think I swing from one to the other side in terms of that. But it is still very much an offer out there. We need to work with our PCNs in terms of how we manage that pause through the summer to ensure that they can still step up as and when we need them to step back up for any boosters, any winter campaigns, etc. But I think it is, what's the phrase, reassuringly quiet in terms of any sort of massive uplift in any of the vaccinations. I think we've done really well over the last 2 years. We've managed on some very tight turnarounds, and we have been reliant upon a lot of goodwill from people in primary care, as we always are, and continually surprised by the application that PCNs have come together to actually manage this. So we can sit here, I think, and be quite proud of what we've achieved across the city.
Okay, any questions? Okay. Is there another planned vaccination round for COVID?
There will likely be something coming out, but I can't, at this point, I suspect it's not been confirmed. But my personal view is that I suspect there will be something coming into the winter, but I can't give details of exactly what that would be because they're unknown to us at this point. But I think it would be unusual for that not to happen, I suspect. So.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you for that. Practice merger applications, Sylvia, or is it Steve? Steve, sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Margaret. Yeah, so this is a proposed merger application for Lake Road Practice and Sunnyside Medical Centre, proposing to merge from October this year. This has largely come about due to difficulty in replacing clinical resource at the Sunnyside practice, and the two practices feel that coming together will create that extra resilience going forward, particularly for, as I say, for Sunnyside. So they would have a combined list of around 37,000 patients. Both practices are within the Island City PCN, so that works quite well. And all three of the sites are to remain open. They're looking to develop a single telephone triage hub covered by GPs, nurses, paramedics, etc. And having that greater pool of clinicians should open up a bit more choice for patients as well. They're talking in their application about trying to maintain a degree of continuity of care for patients, which is quite good to see. Obviously not always appropriate, but where that is, they're looking to maintain continuity of care, seeing the same GPs where possible. In terms of communications, they've held 2 events. One was a drop-in and one they did a presentation. I was actually off that week, but my colleague went along to one of those and said it seemed to go really well. Quite a few patients asking questions, and the practice are updating their FAQ list as and when they get questions from patients, and they're addressing those questions. They've actually got a meeting with their PPG on Friday of this week, just to run through some of the issues that have been raised by patients and talk that through a bit more. So that's really useful. And I think it's a good fit with these 2 practices. They seem to have a similar ethos, and they've had a couple of events where the 2 practices have come together for meetings, and that sounds like it's been really positive as well. Obviously, there's always potential short-term disruption when the merger happens, usually, but longer term, you can see the positives. I normally try and stay fairly neutral on these sort of applications, but I think on this occasion, I'm happy to say that I would certainly support the application. I think it's certainly needed in terms of that extra resilience. So I would support that going ahead in October, but very happy to take questions and comments from other committee members.
Are there any questions, Simon?
Just an observation, a generic observation in terms of practice mergers like this. I don't think we often do ourselves the best service sometimes when we say that we could describe this potentially as losing a practice because we've got a merger. We're not actually physically losing any sites at all. We'll still be delivering those services from all of those sites with all of the teams that are there, pending the normal flow to and from in terms of the staffing that we have got. I just think sometimes when we look like we've over the excuse me, when we look over the last few years, when we've gone from 20 odd practices down to where are we now, 12, potentially 11, it feels like we're sort of losing bricks and mortar. When we're not, we've still got all of these branch sites available across the whole of the city. I think sometimes just a comment that says that's one less practice within Portsmouth does a disservice in terms of what this does. I think this, as Steve says, I think I'm very positive about this as a merger. I think it brings resilience and to continue to provide those services rather than potentially reading into another drop in a practice.
That's certainly worth saying. Any other comments or questions? Linda?
No, again, supportive of the application, given the state of primary care and resilience being needed. I think it's a good move. I think they've had, some time together working as a PCN first, so they're not going in completely blind. They are used to working with each other now, and so I think that is a natural stepping stone onto a merge.
And they're proposing to retain as John Pines and keep it open, which I think will be welcomed by a number of people.
Yeah, absolutely, Margaret. And we're working with the practice currently to scope out the needs of that population down in that particular locality to see what services need to be provided. So yeah, it's looking quite positive there.
That will be part of the resilience, presumably. Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
So it sounds like a good news story. We're being asked to agree the contractual merger. Are people happy to agree it?
Agreed.
Yeah. Right. Is there any dissent? No. Okay. Okay, that then is agreed. Okay, thank you. Move on to the Health Watch presentation. Roger.
Thank you, Margaret. I'll just get it up on my screen. So this was us coming back with another survey that we did. We asked our volunteers to conduct another survey into primary care websites. So I'll take it that everyone's read the paper. So we did one previously in 2020 and made some recommendations. This is coming on the back of that, and specifically in light of NHSE's Improving Access to General Practice Communications Guide and Resources Pack, published in 2017. So we did an observational review of all the GP practice websites, and the purpose of it was to identify the information that could and could not be found on each GP website, to gather feedback on the patient experience of using GP practice websites, to share the information by publication to members of the public, which we've done, and to make recommendations to commissioners and providers, which we're doing. So there were a number of key findings, which you can read at your leisure, and some comments. Recommendations, there were 5. And they are: a need for GP website development to ensure that information is accessible in different language formats. That was found to be difficult by some of the researchers. Some of the home pages clearly need to be refreshed and renewed to avoid becoming cluttered with information. Website development should also look at the number of words being written and required to read. If you look at them, some of them are quite cluttered, and look to convey information in other formats such as audio, video, animation and slides. And information on how to make a complaint needs to be more readily available. And this committee should consider supporting a campaign such as the My Right to Healthcare cards, which I've mentioned before, as an internal means of raising awareness and to promote access as an equality and diversity initiative. So I in my cover slide, asked the committee to approve this, but we're very, very happy as Healthwatch to work with Steve and his team and the PCNs to make this happen, to come up with an innovative plan to help not just the infamous cards that I've tried to mention at every possible juncture, which we've got loads of, and I'm sure other providers have. The homeless team definitely have, but I've certainly looked at some of the websites as well, and they are still asking for 2 forms of ID, even if that is to ascertain an address that's within the practice geographical area. It doesn't say that, and that's the report. So open for questions or comments.
Right, do we have any questions or comments before we are being asked to agree this? Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Roger. Always useful for Healthwatch portals to undertake surveys such as this. I think the key one is around the registration process, probably. I think whilst most practices are probably okay on that, I certainly saw 2 or 3 myself where the wording does need to be changed. I can understand why some practices might prefer to see the ID, so just to validate the address, etc. And there's no harm in, I don't think, in them asking for that, but they certainly can't insist on it. So I think it's all in the wording with some of that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so I'm very happy, as you say, to work together on that and link up with the practices. Some of the other recommendations look like they could be some good practice for some practices to adopt there, which others are already doing. But obviously we'd like to give the practices a chance to review it themselves and respond in case that maybe the information was there, just couldn't be found at the time, in which case it maybe needs to be made more visible possibly as well. But as I said to you earlier, very happy to catch up with you next week and link up with the practices and all of this.
Fab. Okay, thanks, Steve.
Thanks.
Others have hands up, but Margaret might have a count of whose hand went up first.
Simon, I think.
Sorry, was that me? Sorry. Yeah, I'm interested to know, Roger, I don't think it's covered in there, and we did mention it earlier on, so it just may not have been part of the survey. But I say, as Jackie mentioned, the R's roles, I think we've probably got a role within the websites to start to make those more visible to patients. So I think and this is my personal anecdotal perception, that sometimes patients will feel that their GP is the first point of call. And if they see their GP and then subsequently get referred on to a pharmacist, hence why I use them first, that's what I am, nurse, specialist, physiotherapist, podiatrist, or whatever the PCN has currently employed within those roles, they anecdotally, we get really good feedback in terms of understanding that system. If they get offered that that appointment first is sometimes seen as being a block to see their GP. And I think we could probably do ourselves and support our patients by actually informing them of some of these specialist roles and the services they can be given. So I think next time we revisit this at some point, it's making sure that that's visible to sort of help the patients to access the specialist services that we have invested in primary care, and to get those more visible to out there. I just think there are lots of patients that don't see that, and I'm on a little bit of a lone one-person national campaign to change the name from a GP surgery, because they're increasingly much wider than just the GP. And I think that the more often we use the GP, I think the more we are sort of inherently pointing people down that route, which may not be the most efficient or even the best one for the patient.
Simon, thank you. And I agree with your sentiments there, that it's very important to let people know that the R's roles are there. And certainly when we've done press releases about sort of GPs and access, we've always mentioned those additional roles. So point taken, thank you very much.
Jackie?
Thank you. Oh yes, I'm slow with my finger. I completely agree with all of those comments, and it's good to hear that you'll touch base with Steve about the need or not for ID, because that seems to be something that we can change. If it's not necessary, it needs tweaking, so it's clear for everybody involved. I think that would be incredibly helpful. In your report, Roger, I'll just make one tiny typo. I think on page 10, you actually name a practice. No other practice has been named within this document. So
okay, we'll amend that, Jackie. Thank you.
Under 11, I would say so. And again, just for clarification for me, with some of the percentage answers that you've got, did they relate to the percentage of GPs websites you went on, or that people went on, or the percentage of respondents' answers were? Does that make sense?
I think it's a bit of everything, Jackie. And if it isn't clear, I'll ask Siobhan to look at that again.
I would, yes.
Yeah, so a lot of it, so first impressions is about the number of volunteers that felt, 92% said yes, the home page is welcoming. And looking at some of the others, yeah, so it's about, we asked the volunteers to look at the sites and a range of questions. The questions are in the pack and the percentages are based on their answers.
Yeah, that might be really helpful, because if you've only had, I don't know how many volunteers you had, but clearly a small number doing a lot of great work. But that's a very different percentage number to the percentage of websites where there may have been changes to be made for better or worse.
Sure. So, right, we'll take a note of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Lisa?
Just a couple of quick points. Just on registration, we do have a web page for practices on information around registration and what they can and can't do. We try to regularly remind them of their obligations, so that information is there. I'm always happy to update practices that are PM webinar if that's helpful. We also have a lunch and learn for practices, which is particularly for reception staff around registration, GMS1s, what sort of information they should and shouldn't be asking for. So we do try to reiterate that. The other one, which is a slight sidestep, but you mentioned sort of information in other languages. We're seeing quite increase from practice and requests for help around Ukrainian refugees and health information. There's a good website which you're probably familiar with that I'll pop in the chat that we're signposting them to, but I suspect that will increase as we sort of see more families arrive, and it's an ongoing thing anyway with other communities, so that is definitely a need, I think, for some support on that.
Okay, well, thanks for that. And I think, yes, we're aware of the support websites, and it's one of those things the city's always done, having worked in health and social care in the city for a long time. It is always updating the list of options for people to have languages translated or interpreted. So thank you, Lisa. Lovely.
Michelle?
And yeah, really good to see this, Roger. It's always helpful, isn't it, to get feedback from the users to make sure that everything is, you know, easily readable and that sort of thing. The only thing I was just going to point out is it's not the CCG's responsibility to change the websites, is it? We need to help support the GPs in realising that if they had it in a clearer way. So I just wanted to make sure that, for the record, that it's not an action on us necessarily, but it is. We will obviously help and assist where we can.
Yeah, and I think we see it as that, Michelle, very much. It's just, you know, obviously it's not something we can do independently, and this seemed the right committee vehicle to bring it to, as we brought it in the past. So yeah, but point taken. Yeah, no,
just
you.
wanted it for the record to know.
Thank you.
Obviously assist where we can, but it is the GP's responsibility to change their websites.
Definitely, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I see that Andy's got his hand up.
Andy, yes.
Thank you, Roger. Really just echoing my colleagues' comments there. A really good survey and report. It made me go and look at my own GP's website afterwards, just to sort of analyse it once more and see if I could see things. And I could, having picked up on what your volunteers had done. So thank you for that. I think there was a piece in there about patient participation groups as well, you know, the links into those. So if they can be picked up on a bit more. I know I've tried to join mine for some years now, and they won't have me for some strange reason.
I'm not laughing out loud, Andy. Took me a while to get on mine, but I did, as Dr. Colley knows well.
Okay. So yeah, so perhaps, you know, if I can manage to infiltrate it in some years to come, we can work from the inside to try and make it a little bit better. But thank you for a good piece of work. Much appreciated.
Andy, that's lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you, Margaret.
I think in conclusion, it sounds like your recommendations are welcomed and supported, and there's going to be further work between yourself and Steve and with some of the practices to ensure that some of these get acted upon. Okay.
Yep, that sounds a lovely outcome. Thank you, and thanks, Steve.
Thank you. Okay, can we then move to the specialist clinical pharmacist team for primary care? Simon, I think that's your update. Linda, this was the one you thought you might have a direct financial interest in? Linda Colley?
You're on mute, Linda.
I'm not sure if you class it as financial, but these will directly help my practices. So there is some sort of
there's an interest. Okay. So we allow you to participate on the basis that it's an indirect interest. Thank you. Okay.
Well, I think it's worth noting that Linda feels that it would be of benefit to practices in primary care, which is probably a tick in the box to start with. So I'll take that as a bonus from the start. I'll take everything that I can. So unfortunately, I think I was off with COVID last time, so unfortunately couldn't present it. So Joe Williams came last time and was asked for some further clarification. So between that meeting and now, we had some concerns shared from Will Howard at LMC. I've since met with Will and discussed through those concerns, and I don't know, Lisa, whether Will has fed back to you that he was happy that I addressed those concerns, and he was quite happy to take this forward, pending what was discussed today. So this is I'm not going to read the whole paper to you, but this is based on the Lord Carter of Cole's report that came out in 2016 that looked at investing in clinical pharmacist posts in secondary care. And it was widely adopted across NHS England in secondary care trusts since 2016. Obviously, we're a good 6 years down the road now. Those specialist drugs and high-cost drugs are, and I suspect that clinicians on the call will recognise that these specialist high-cost drugs are starting to come into primary care to the benefit of the patient to a degree, in that they can now be treated in the primary care space rather than having to attend a secondary care space. But currently there is a feeling of a lack of expertise in some of these new drugs. So the premise is to replicate that approach that Lord Coles took in terms of promoting clinical pharmacists in specialist areas, and to bring those into the primary care space. I appreciate this is very much a big bang in respect to that. So we put down, I think we've got one for every role, every clinical role we could think of at the time. So I appreciate this is going completely to an extreme, but I think we could describe one of these roles somewhere within the countries in taking these forwards, and the closest example would be Southampton City, where they have a dedicated opioids pharmacist based on the current review of opioids that we have. But you can describe that in each of the other clinical specialities where we have some quite high-end medications coming into primary care. So around the familial cholesterolemia, we've got some high-end MABs coming into there. We've got some very complicated patients now increasingly taking on more expensive and high-end drugs within areas such as diabetes and cardiovascular, etc. The paper describes some of the issues that we have around the use of antipsychotics in dementia, and we are a high area for that. And as we've repeatedly heard on the meeting today, that primary care is wilting to a degree in some of the pressure for some of these spaces. We are largely challenged, as was noted recently in the press, in terms of GPs, which is a national issue. And I appreciate we are at the end of that, but of note, not every city was able to be counted within that data set. So, but whilst we can try and do everything we can to recruit GPs, I think that will still be a challenge. So the premise around this is to support those GPs with an expertise hosted by the CCG Medicines Optimization team, but very much working in practices to provide direct patient care. So these would all be prescribers to deliver that care with patients. So we would need to be honorary contracts with each of the practices to work as prescribers. The reason why we look down the route of manage them within the CCG is so they actually remain in that space as a specialist pharmacist. And take on that particular cohort where we've identified those challenges in improving the clinical care. I think there is a likelihood with the current repeat prescribings that pharmacists can get pulled into the more process-based repeat prescribing processes, when actually the aim for these pharmacists was to add a skill set to a particularly identified cohort of patients who are on the newer high-end agents, and so to prevent some of those recurrent admissions around medicines related, and there's some statistics in there in terms of the avoidable medicines related admissions, and there will be some unavoidable medicines related issues, but this is trying to remove those avoidable ones in terms of where patients have come to harm due to a known issue taking that medication that perhaps we could have avoided prior to them going in. This is also linked to some of the national pieces of work which will start to come down around the discharge medicine service, around patients in community pharmacists and being reassured around the appropriate use of their medicines on discharge. And to that end, the specialist pharmacists would have a role in terms of educating the additional hours roles in pharmacists and GPs and other clinicians within primary care in terms of their specialist area. We would very much expect these to be see the patients holistically as well. So we wouldn't expect patients to be passed from pillar to post. If you have a diabetes issue because you're on specialist medication, but there's also an issue around your opioid use potentially, then we would expect those to be picked up at the same time. So we've got generalists that can cover the holistic review, but are specialists in their area in terms of those more complicated patients. We have engaged widely, and I have spoken to the chief pharmacist within PHU, within Solent, and the current lead ICB pharmacist, all of which are very supportive of that. And the feedback from the ICB is that this type of approach very much meets his vision for the future of pharmacists within primary care. and it fits very much in terms of blurring the primary care, secondary care interface, which I'm sure the patients do themselves. So this should allow us to give a high quality specialist approach to patients with some quite complex, difficult, high cost medications to prevent admissions and potentially fatal problems with medications. I'll take a breath there because I haven't just noticed I haven't got a glass of water, but the throat's going dry. So happy to take questions. I note this is far from an insignificant spend, and we are very acutely aware of that. But I think this is a chance for Portsmouth to innovate and grasp a thorny issue where shared care and challenging medications are increasingly coming out to primary care.
Okay, thanks, Simon. Any questions, comments? Can't believe there aren't any. Michelle.
I'll let go. I was waiting for somebody to press the button first, so I'll let Jackie go first if I may.
Okay, Jackie.
I support this. I fully support it. And I remember asking a similar question before, but I'll ask it again. It's a big ask for each of those pharmacists, the kind of scale of the work that we're asking them. Is it attractive? Is it realistic?
So I think we would be naive to say tomorrow I could fill these posts with 7 specialist pharmacists. Simply that would be it would be a complete surprise to me. I don't know of 7 pharmacists who could walk into these roles. I may well be surprised, but I think there is a very good chance of filling a good proportion of these. I think these roles are incredibly attractive to pharmacists. I think we would probably need to have if hypothetically we were to say, yes, you can go and recruit 7 pharmacists, I think the best I could describe would be a phased role of these pharmacists coming in. And whilst I would, in a perfect world, like to tell you which order those clinical posts I would like to fill, I think we would look at what was actually available out there in terms of the expertise. I think from day one, some of these would need upskilling, depending on where they've come from. There is an expectation that some of these would come from secondary care. So there is the potential to taking some of the more junior pharmacists into the AA roles, which is your career grade pharmacist, effectively, as their first step into this space, and would need upskilling. And we have discussed, and I discussed with Joe, the potential for having these as developmental posts, so potentially initially a band 7 if we couldn't get an appropriate post, but we had a suitable candidate who was willing to work with secondary care and to bring those skills up and to work with primary care and to understand the challenges to primary care whilst they upskilled into that post, while still being able to give holistic reviews to patients, which might not be in that specialist area from day one. So I think we're not being completely naive. This is a best case scenario, I think, in terms of addressing those situations that we dealt with in the paper. But I think we would need to, we would be amazed if I end up with 7 pharmacists. I think if we could get 2 or 3 into those specialist posts and potentially 1 or 2 willing to evolve into those and learn and take on that expertise, I think we would be more than happy.
Sounds great. And does that mean the costings may flex up or flex down a little bit depending on who we're able to take on and what upskilling they may need, may not need?
So there is some I'll wait till Michelle comes in around the costs, depending on how the degree of which it flexes up or flexes down. So I think there is that in terms of where we actually need. This is in terms of the finance, this would be a maximum envelope in terms of that, in terms of ongoing costs. I think it's difficult to a degree to identify those direct savings from that to counterbalance because the savings wouldn't necessarily be within the drugs budget, which is the easy to count portion. But I think there is an improvement in terms of that clinical care, which sometimes is a bit more difficult to count. But I think, yeah, it would need to be a degree of flex. I'm not expecting to get a yes to effectively £500,000 today per se.
Thank you, Simon. That's really helpful.
Michelle?
Yeah, as you'd expect, I have asked Simon a few questions before the meetings, most of which Simon has articulated out loud. I think the case itself, what would warrant just updating to add in those things, Simon, for future reference, because with it, I think the case is much more robust. And therefore, you know, if we got asked questions, why on earth did you make that decision? It will be clearer to those people reading that, reading the business case. And to that end, I would also recommend that you do try and articulate what the cost savings might be, cost avoidance might be, quality benefit might be, because I think you'd be, you know, quite surprised that you soon tot up to the £500,000 you're asking for. And then in terms of the profile of that spend, well, clearly we're nearly 3 months into the new year anyway, so there's already slippage, isn't there, in terms of
absolutely
ask, and some of the ask is non-recurring, etc. So the sooner we can get on with trying to see if we can recruit to the roles, probably will be, you know, this patients will be the better for it, won't they? Because, you know, I am in support of the case. I just would like it to articulate the reasons why slightly better than it currently does.
Absolutely, happy to undertake that.
Any other questions or comments? No? People generally content with to support the principles behind this?
Yeah, agreed.
Proposal? Yeah. Sounds like there is going to be a need to ensure that you reprofile the spend and talk something about the cost savings. Say something about the cost savings you expect to have. And it sounds like there are a number of other minor amendments.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, the committee's happy then. We'll finance will work with Simon just to make sure we articulate that and put it into the paper. The other thing I was going to suggest, maybe bring it back in 6 months to PCOG, just as this is where we've got to. If there's any benefits that are already being shown, show it so that it shows that progress.
On that basis, are people happy to agree this proposal?
Yeah, agreed.
Okay. No dissenters? No. Okay. Then
thank you very much. For once in my life, I will send Jo Williams a text while she's on holiday because she's been asking for it.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Then I'll tell her to stop worrying about work.
We did have a rather robust discussion last time, Simon, in your absence, but yes, it sounds like it was worthwhile. Okay. Can we then move to the primary care local incentive scheme? And Steve?
Yeah, thank you, Margaret. This did come before the committee previously, so we were asked just to bring back the final version. There's been some minor tweaks, but nothing significant at all following feedback from stakeholders. I think we had 1 or 2 practices come back with a couple of suggestions, but they were very minor tweaks, to be honest. So this is just being brought back for everyone to see the final version for sign off, really.
Okay. Any questions or comments? No. Okay. Oh, Jackie. Sorry.
It's okay, Margaret. I'm just not quick enough. Yeah, I think this reads really well, actually. It feels comprehensive. It feels like we're, you know, covering a lot. Can I just ask how many? There's a optional element, and I'm sure I ask this every year, around patient education and community engagement program. Have most practices signed up to that or seem keen to sign up to it? Because it feels important.
Good question, Jackie. I don't have that at my fingertips, but I can find out quite easily for you. I think usually most practices do sign up to that and engage with some of it. But I'm happy to confirm after the meeting, if you like.
Thank you. And then very quick ones on 5.6 in the paper, the scheme components. The last sentence says changes to any levels of support may be necessary due to circumstances beyond the control of NHS Portsmouth CCG. I don't know what we were referring to. Is that to us morphing into an ICS or something?
Sorry, would you just mind?
Yeah, so we're on 5.6 on page 3, and it's the, have you got there? The last sentence of 5.6.
5.6.
Got
it, all right.
Yeah, and it's last, and changes to any level of support may be necessary due to circumstances beyond the control of NHS Portsmouth. I wasn't quite sure what that meant or what we were referring to.
Yeah, so I'm not entirely sure either, Jackie, if I'm being really honest. This I probably would have asked because Chris, Chris Horan led on the primary care. Well, I was going to say primary care sequence, and we call it primary care Liz now, a local incentive scheme. So I'm sure she would have been able to give you a very quick answer on that, but I'm not too sure.
Could always bring it back another time or answer to PCOG just for clarification, because I doubt I'll be the only one that asks the questions when people are going through their.
Yeah, whether she was thinking it's something to do with future working arrangements, I can't think it would be, to be honest. So, yeah, I'll have to come back to you on that one as well, Jackie, I'm afraid.
That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. I know some of these are very niche, to say the least. And then 8.1, would it be helpful to have the complaints procedure link somewhere? We make mention of it, but not that I expect anybody to just complain, but it's nice when you know how to.
Complaints procedure.
Yeah, at 8.1. In accordance with the local complaints procedure and notify them. Yeah,
we could certainly share that with practice if they need a copy of that. Yeah.
Thank you. That was it. Thank you.
So we are happy to accept with some of those amendments the local incentive scheme proposal. Or any other questions like that?
No, quite happy, agreed.
Okay, thank you. Can we then move to any other business? Is there any other business that people have? No? Just to say this, it's been great working with you. But this is the last public meeting of the Primary Care Commissioning Committee for Portsmouth. So we should just mark that and thank you all for your attendance and your contributions. Is that Andy? Who's I've got a hand up. Nicola?
Oh, sorry, Margaret. It was just a quick A and B to close out and answer Jackie's question around the R's roles. The team have sent those numbers through. So just for the record, the number of WTs that we've gone into this year with is an additional 68.4 WTEs, and that's across 82 headcount. So quite a significant increase in the workforce across the city, which is fantastic.
Excellent. Thank you.
Very good. And Roger.
Thank you, Margaret. Well, I'd also reiterate what you've just said, but everyone's talking about PCOG, and it's always nice to have an operational group. Sat on many in my time. Do we know what the membership is? I'm just thinking of the role for Health Watch, just to be selfish for a moment.
Does anyone know what the membership of PCOG is? Simon?
I'd be very much surprised, Roger, if it was very similar to what you're looking at. We would need the expertise of those already here to inform how we operationalise. It's becoming a long day.
Good.
So I think we very much would welcome yourself, or if you're not able to do it, then somebody else from Health Watch to actually give us that support in terms of how we take some of the ICB projects forward and make sure that they fit the population of Portsmouth. I can see the ICB being challenged in trying to come up with one solution for all. Sometimes that might fit, but I think very much it needs a local flavour in order to meet the needs of our own population. And I think we very much have that expertise already here without needing necessarily to go wider. I think we have a fully fledged PCOG. We just need to change the name of the committee.
Okay, I think, yes, I was going to just say to you, yeah, it sounds like just changing the name, but yes, that would be good to see all these familiar faces at the same rebranded meeting. So thank you, Steve. Simon, sorry, thank you, Margaret.
Steve, you have your hand up?
Oh, I don't think I was next, but I'll go really quick just to say, Jackie, all practices are signed up to the patient education aspect, just so you know.
Superb, thank you.
Nicola? You've got a hand up? Is that...
I'll let just Christina go first because she might have an additional update. But yeah, in terms of all of those SFIs and standard operating procedures, etc., for the ICB, they're due to come to review at our next audit committee on the 20th to look at what rights and responsibilities might sit within PCOG, etc. So it's very much a work in progress at the moment.
Justina.
Thank you. I was just going to respond to Roger's comment about the terms of reference. I've got a draft terms of reference for PCOG, Roger, and you're very firmly on there. So as Simon said, I think we're really clear that the value in which you and your organisation bring, certainly can't be dismissed. So, so just to let you know, as well as the LMC and other representatives, there will definitely be attendance or an invitation there.
Oh, Justine, you've made my day. Thank you. I should have put the heart emoji thing up, shouldn't I? Thank you.
Yes. Jackie, your hands up?
Yes, it is. Of course, there's some of us that are not going to be in PCOG or whatever. So I just want to thank you, Margaret, for your chairpersonship. It's been excellent.
Not so sure about that.
Oh, well, I am. So thank
well,
you.
we are just all expecting that in the new arrangements in PCOG and in the ICB and ICP, primary care has a growing voice, a stronger voice, and is served well by those arrangements. So we hope that that's the case in future. Thank you very much for your time and for your contributions, all of you. Thank you. All the best. Thank you.
Justina's got her hand up.
Well, it was just that final thank you, Margaret. I mean, you've chaired this committee for a while, and I know sometimes it's not been easy, but I just wanted to thank you for all your work and dedication in the area of primary care and elsewhere within the CCG. So, so just to offer my hearty thanks.
Thank you.
Absolutely ditto. And all your work in the city over many years, not meaning to age you particularly, but thank you.
Yes, that's enough of that. I'm really sorry we haven't managed to have face-to-face meetings, but I think hopefully you will do those fairly shortly. Bye. Okay, thank you very much. Bye. See you in a moment.
Thanks, Margaret.
Thanks, Margaret.